very good evening to you and welcome yet again to Face the Nation, where we discuss the questions that you want to be answered. Our topic of discussion today is the state of governance in Sri Lanka. There have been quite a lot of significant developments in the island over the last few weeks. We'll be discussing all this and more tonight on the show. Our guests this evening are Mr. Krishmal Varansurya, attorney at law. He has joined our show before as well on a prior occasion. A very good evening to you and welcome to the show, Mr. Varansurya.
Thank you, sir.
Also joining us this evening is senior attorney at law, Mr. Govinda Ashwin. Nice to have you on the show again,
nice
Mr.
to be
Ashwin.
back.
And also Mr. Asoka Begunawardana, Managing Director of the Strategic Management Enterprise Agency. We start off this evening with attorney at law, Mr. Krishmal Varansurya. State of governance in Sri Lanka. You're back in red. I'm a bit confused, Mr. Varansurya. Again in the red team, or?
Shamil, one must do something with the shirts one bought during the election campaign. So I thought, and also I had to attend another function afterwards, so I thought red for the evening.
Red for the evening, indeed. State of good governance is good governance in the red. Your time starts now.
Yeah. Thank you, Shamir. Firstly, thanks to MTV Embassy and your station and all of you for inviting us again. Nice to be here. State of good governance. Question, Shamir, is do we have good governance now? As someone who, as you all know, it's coincidental that we're discussing this today, end of October, November. I believe it was about a year back, starting around October, November last year, when actually some people are afraid to say this, that I joined a few brethren and got on a stage challenging a third term of the then president, who we called nepotistic, despotic. We wanted a regime change, and then that call was rallied around on the 8th of January. The people of this country, I don't think any political party did that change. The people of this country rallied around that call and said that they wanted a change. They rallied behind President Sirisena and they made that change. Now we've come to about a year of that whole working. 10 months of the government, then August we had another change, which the people endorsed that mandate on the 8th of January. But it's a question for me as someone who actually, in what little way possible, canvassed the troops or rallied the ranks, if you like, to make that change, whether we have that good governance that we sought, whether the rule of law that we so vociferously espoused is there for us, whether we have just another government that's governing for the sake of governing. Still they finish their 5-year tenure and they go on with their merry governing with their, their overseas trips and trip here, trip there on business class travel courtesy of us the people, and then come and give us a bit of news here and there to talk about for a few months. And then, if that is so, then that's not the government that we wanted. But I must say, it's better than what it was. You saw, there was a time when the few of us who were rallying around and going on stages trying to make the change, that lots of people were actually afraid to speak. But now there appears to be a little bit more freedom and more people seem to be speaking. That's possibly why we hear more dissent now. So that the freedom of speech, I think, and that part of democracy, yes, we must admit, it's there. The fear psychosis is not there anymore.
Better than what it was, Mr. Varansurya.
Better than what
is this what the people expect?
No, so I'm getting there. But I am not happy. Because us talking, like as Shakespeare says, none as blind as those that do not see. We keep on talking on your channel every day and wherever we get the opportunity to. But if the change is not happening, I don't know whether we got the change that we desire. So there is a long way to go. And also this question of, we look at, particularly on the aspect of corruption, I'll quickly finish this. Now we look at the top. We say that corruption hasn't ended, people are not being brought to book. I served for a little while after that change in January on some of these corporate boards and all that. We don't see the corruption that happens at the second tier. I was amazed. The millions of salaries that were totally uncalled for that were paid, the acquisitions that were being done in most of these corporations, etc. None of this goes to the people. You see, so I don't know whether this good government is actually tackling it, because I don't see that. And also the lack of opposition in parliament, maybe we can discuss that later. So I am not happy as someone who canvassed that change.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law, Mr. Krishmal Varansurya. I now move on to Mr. Asoka Begunawardana, Managing Director of the Strategic Management Enterprise Agency. Mr. Begunawardana, Mr. Varansurya was talking about the freedom of expression. However, we saw yesterday 39 students being arrested opposite the University Grounds Commission. Is this good governance in play? Your time starts now.
Well, we need to first look at the broader picture and understand the incidents that were happening. Because anyway, irrespective of the mechanisms in place, these incidents may happen, which is not, this cannot be justified. Things are happening. But I wish to draw your attention to the broader picture. Now, as he mentioned now, have we witnessed any change right now? And are we satisfied with that? That's the main issue. Firstly, I must say that, well, we were part of this process of contributing to make the change that happened. And since then, we were looking towards a 100 days program, which was extended to 6 to 7 months. And then now we have a new government. But we need to understand that this is not a revolution that happened. If a revolution has happened, then a particular political group will be organized, they will be organizing, and they will be getting momentum to make the change. This particular change is that did not happen in that way, mainly because the current president got the support of the opposition to beat his own party. So in this context, what we can expect is a long-term, slow and steady march towards achieving certain goals. So my expectation is that we are not satisfied. We were expecting to happen more during the first 100 days or the first 6 months. It's not satisfactory. However, this process, when we were initiating, we were thinking of a short-term 100 days plus a 2-year program with a national government. That was stated in the manifesto, working towards achieving certain goals with the 2 major parties involved. So that process has completed, and now the 2 major parties should get together and make certain changes, and that should be completed within a 2-year period. So what
Mr. Abhigaravardhan, you said that you were also part of this change. You did not identify it as a revolution, but you were part of this change as well. Are you disgruntled in the way in which this government is now moving forward? Is that what you're trying to say?
No. What I'm trying to say is that now we need to face the reality that the 2 rival major parties are working together, and our target was to establish certain long-term policies, strategies, and a mechanism to implement a long-term program in which we may be able to address short-term. So I was not that keen for the digging the past and reacting to what happened in the past. But I am worried if we cannot establish a mechanism so that it will not happen after the 2 years period, then it's an issue. So my feeling is that now, as I am involved in this process right now at the President's office, Presidential Secretariat, the policies which are most important to the country is being formulated, and we will be able to achieve certain things during the next 2 years. So I can discuss about that later on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abhigaravardhan, Managing Director of the Strategic Enterprise Management Agency. I now move on to Senior Attorney at Law, Mr. Gomindasri. Mr. Dasri, you've been extremely vocal about the international investigation that is supposed to be launched in Sri Lanka. You told me that you've read very thoroughly the Paranagama and Udulagama Commission reports as well. Now, these reports in question have been tabled now in Parliament. If you really closely read the Paranagama report in question, it is somewhat favorable to the former regime. However, it was not tabled during the former regime's era as well. What is the thinking right now of the present Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe when tabling these 2 reports in question in Parliament? Was it a strategic move by him? Your time starts now.
I think it was a clever move on his part to have presented in Parliament, because not only did he present the Paranagama report, but he also presented the Udulagama report. Now this is very interesting, because very often we blame the politicians. Rightly they have to be blamed, but I think this country will never go forward, not because of the politicians, but because of the public servants who are behind them. Now if you look at it, why was the Udulagama report not presented when it was very favorable if read properly? to the past administration. They suppressed it. Suppression means there was suspicion. Why was it not? When it was very favorable to them. The reason is very simple. When documents are produced at length in English, very few politicians are capable of reading. Those who are capable don't read it. They pass it on to their secretaries or to whoever their political advisors or who are the public servants. They don't read it. So end of the day, what we have is a situation. When you look at the responses to the Udulagama report, when you see the responses to the Geneva report, when you see the responses to the Paranagama report, I can assure you one thing. Those who talk about it know very little about it. They just pick and choose a few things. So because you must remember that politicians are either allergic or averse to reading. But there's a duty by the public servants. That is why you find in England, in India, very strong public servants who are very dedicated to their work. Our public servants, many of them who are put to positions are political appointments even if they are from the public service. They don't do the job. So if that is so, whatever government comes, there is not governance, there is misgovernance, and that is exactly what is happening in this country.
Mr. When you really look at the Paranagama report in question, you can see an international flavor to it. Do you think that the former regime got the intervention of foreign observers to compile this report in question?
Now the report is Paranagama's report, but I can assure you when you read it, the depth of it, the language, the turn of phrase is much more sophisticated than what any High Court judge would be able to read. Why is that? Because I think there was something that the last government can get credit, but they are not taking the credit because Mahinda Rajapaksa had just disappeared from the scene.
The former regime took the support of international observers to compile a report.
Not international observers, they got the support of international advisors. Now there was a very good team, Desmond De Silva, QC, Professor Nice, Professor Lane. They were very competent, very qualified people accepted by the UN. They gave the input to the Paranagama report, which is a counter to the Darusman report. Now the danger is this. We go and sign to an agreement knowing very well that the Geneva report had something called systems crime. Now if systems crime to which we have now subscribed by writing that agreement means even if we give amnesties, all other countries will refuse to accept it, and they will accept the fact that this country, the two main communities have genuine reason of not being able to live together. What would it mean? It would mean in the future partition could take place.
Ms. Ashri, just one final question before we move on to the journalist round. Ms. Ashri, a few weeks ago you were against international advisors coming to Sri Lanka, international observers coming to Sri Lanka. On this very show you expressed your views and opinions. However, now, by judging with what you're saying right now, I'm a bit surprised and perplexed whether you have changed your stand now after looking at these reports.
No,
very quickly.
That's a very good question. I'm still very much against international judges, international prosecutors, international investigators, international investigators. I'm fully for international advisors because in certain areas we don't have skills. I say we must have international advisors, and that is why the Paranagama report is so balanced. Once again I say also we must have international observers because these inquiries will gain legitimacy. Remember, even the Udulagama report had international advisors, what they called a group of eminent people including that great Darusman, and international observers.
Thank you very much.
We must have it. I'm consistent on that position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dashri. We now move on to the journalist round. Let me introduce a very young journalist today. On to my far left is Chaturanga Porachi, works with Newsfirst. Nice to have you on board today.
Thank you,
Chaturanga. Looking forward for some good questions today. And then we have on to my immediate left Farad Shawkat Ali, our investigative journalist. He's also attached with Newsfirst. He also hosts the show Newsline in the mornings, and on Wednesdays at 8:30, his show Hot Seat is also telecast on MTV as well. And on to my immediate right is Nadeem Majid. Nice to have you on board, Nadeem, as usual. So let's start off today with Chaturanga.
Yes, I would like to draw my first question to Mr. Varnasuri. Now, since we are talking about good governance here, and you used the phrases better than what it was, I think Shamir picked it up when you were speaking. Now, my question is, we saw the former president being brought before the commission to investigate, presidential commission to investigate associated fraud and corruption. And we also saw today Anukumar Dissanayake, the leader of the JVP, saying that the president being brought to the commission itself looks like as if they are bringing the actor of a movie, because the real perpetrator, the real wrongdoer is someone else. And we saw another example yesterday was that we saw a female, rather an actress being brought to the presidential commission. Are these institutions that have been established to make sure good governance is there, are they taking it too far? What's going on?
On the particular instances you referred to, Chaturanga, I do not know for what reason Mr. Dissanayake used to term that the real culprit was not there. I don't know who the real culprit is. We will have to ask him that. But I do believe that there is a bit of showmanship happening with these so-called investigations, because now that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Remember, politics is also, if played shrewdly, you can show the people that you're governing whilst not doing anything at all, and you go on your merry governing for a while. Now these shows, or what we feel are media shows, now they give wide coverage. The president comes, he makes a statement, then they take a preliminary objection that the presidential commission cannot have anyone other than Supreme Court judges. Now that's good. Now they're going on. They're going to challenge this in the court of law. That will go on for another 1.5 years. Then they go back to the commission, they say new judge, that will go for another 3 years. So for 5 years, we are going to have people talking about, I say, y'all are taking some action, no, against this former president. Then similarly, we go to Dubai saying to catch money. But we go without a court order or investigation here, and the Dubai court says, look, go and get your law straight and come back with a proper order. So we are showing people. Unfortunately, I know that what we are saying even now, or for instance what Faraz and I write to the English papers, is not reaching a mass cross-section of society. That's the misfortune of it. That is why Colombo, the suburbs change in their voting patterns, but the grassroots remain the same. Going back to the question, yes, there appears to be a bit of a showmanship. I would really like them to get over the showmanship and get something done. If you are not the culprit, release you from all charges. If you are, finish the inquiry and get on with it. We have a country to run. We don't want to wait for 5 years saying, well, we have done something or appear to be doing something until they go on with the merry governing.
But the problem is, now we saw during the run-up to the election, we saw the opposition parties coming forward and saying we need the government to take steps against the wrongdoers, the perpetrators. We need action to be taken. Now, action is being taken.
But take the right action.
No, now the opposition parties, the same opposition parties that were talking against the parties that were ruling, the people who wanted the change, are now saying, look here, now the actors are
tell me the opposition in parliament. You tell me who are shadow foreign ministers. Tell me who are shadow finance ministers. Where is the opposition? A legislature is supposed to have a governing party and an opposition, we say in English, who are breathing down your neck. Say, tomorrow if you fall, I am ready to form a government. Do we have such opposition?
So let me direct your question back to you.
Yeah.
Is this better than what it was?
No, that's the part I said which is not better than what it was. I only limited myself to that freedom of expression, subject of course to what happened yesterday down Ward Place, which that also seems to be curtailed now. But I feel that more people are, even if you look at your shows on Sirasa, more people are coming out and speaking. Then we were ducking white vans to, I remember coming after the court-martial hearing from the naval headquarters, and we were ducking motorcyclists who were following us. So then there were only a few people to talk. But now there appears to be more people free to speak. That is there. Other than that, I'm not happy.
Mr. Varnasurya, as a network, we've always stood with the people, and every time there has been a problem, we've always come out and without any fear.
I applaud you all for that.
And our organization has come to the forefront as well in terms of that.
Mr. I applaud you for that. I applaud you for that. I applaud Sirasa for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varnasurya. Mr. Asoka Gunawardena, you said that you somewhat helped this change come into play. Do you agree with what Mr. Varnasurya is saying right now about not being happy with
yes, I
the current
agree.
format?
And in addition, I need to add something, because even when I attended earlier, I mentioned that lack of professionalism is the core issue. Now, the investigations happening, they are not discussing the real issues. Now, they were mainly focusing on certain events held and something happened during the election period, but the real issues we were looking at were not those. We were looking at the corruption-related allegations involved with mega projects. We discussed about mega deals. So those things, even we are not discussing those things right now.
Mr. Abhimanyu, example, let's talk about Vele Sudha's incident. Now he has been sentenced to death. His sister was also put behind bars for the possession of heroin. Now, initially, a few weeks ago you said the Vele Sudha's incident also you brought into limelight. You said nothing has been done. However, this government is somewhat working towards putting people behind bars and prosecuting them. Why have you taken a different stand now, Mr.
No, I agree. The issue is we need to address the root cause. Unless we do that, we can punish the person, but the situation will not change in the future. So now from the Presidential Secretariat, now the President has advised, he had a special programs towards this drugs-related, narcotics-related matter. So it's a firm program, and for which there was a cabinet paper submitted and approved with a comprehensive plan.
Ms. Dayasri, just give me a second. I want to pose a question to Ms. Dayasri. Ms. Dayasri, lack of professionalism. You're a senior attorney at law. Do you see lack of professionalism on the part of the government when investigating?
So. I think so. It's not only the government, it is the public servants and the private sector. I think of something that is very essential is bribery and corruption charges. The act should cover the private sector. Because very often it is the private sector that originates much of the crime relating to bribery and corruption, the individuals. I think public servants should certainly be targeted. But why only the public servants? So I think this society, we got to bring in any culprit, whatever complexion, color, profession he does. As far as professions are concerned, I'm very disappointed because today's professionals are too servile. Though there was a time when my profession in law, we were great advocates for causes. Today, people are very servile. Why? Because I think it's the fee structure. People are concerned more of it's becoming a business, not a profession.
Actually, I read an interesting paper this morning. It was a university research paper about what keeps rich countries rich and what keeps poor countries poor. So it basically boils down to three factors: institutions, culture and geography. Now this covers a lot, but I'd like to focus, because we're talking about institutions here, that poor countries generally have very poor institutions. Is that what's wrong with Sri Lanka? Our institutions are very weak.
I think institutions, it's not only institutions. I think we had a rich culture. We had a system of education that brought out people who are fearless.
How long ago?
Well, I think the real culprits is my generation. I think things are going to be better, I hope, with the next generation.
So you're saying that we had a rich culture and a proper system the generation before yours?
I would say not generation, yes, I would say they were much better. For example, my seniors in the profession were far more aggressive and I mean, they would not stand nonsense that people stand up to today. And I mean, you look at the media. Media has just come alive, but that's why it's young journalists who are doing well. But there was a time when everybody cowed down. I think what this society needs is a reawakening.
How would you go about doing this reawakening? How do you reawaken a servile people?
It's a very difficult thing to explain in a few minutes. But I would say that education, in a sense, I would say that public school system helped it. The central school system has made people very much inclined towards political stoogery. That is, there are a number of factors. It is, I think, anybody to be independent must be economically on a strong footing, at least able to survive. Those are difficulties that people face today. And I think, one thing, Nasim, it's a young people who are very, one would say, have romantic views, have a certain value structure that is gradually broken down by society that they live in.
Mr. Abhimanyu, you spoke about a root cause, that we need to address the root cause. What is the root cause?
Yeah, now that's what I'm saying. Now we need to work simultaneously in a number of fronts if we are to address these root causes. Like the mechanisms in place, it will motivate the people not to work. Instead of that, we need to establish mechanisms so that if a person is willing to work for the nation, country before self, they should be motivated to work. But the existing systems does not allow because he will be facing number of issues.
Like what? Can you give me an example, just for the benefit of
now in the past, actually, now I was advising to some of the ministries earlier during the last regime. I was in the power sector, so we wanted to make it clear that the contracts made should be transparent and should be technically sound. But when we try to do it, they will sometimes certain officials who were trying to raise the real issues, they were sidelined, and the corrupt people were motivated to
So the way I see it, Mr. Abegunwardana, is that a big problem here is the lack of transparency and restrictions against the free flow of information. Now, the freedom of information, the right to information is what they're being called, is what the bill is being called. That seems to be dead in the water as well. What happened to it? It's all forgotten with the 100 days.
Well, I have no idea what exactly the situation is, but that would be revived. But the point is, I just want to highlight that this is not just the information, but we need to, the professionals, that's what I'm highlighting, the lack of professionalism in the business. They are the people who can make available the information. Just providing some information won't work, but we need to analytically analyze the root causes behind those things, because a minor technical change may give a wrong result. A wrong input will give wrong result. So just information is not sufficient. Someone who is capable, who is aware of the subject, should be able to have a critical view at it, and then make available information which can be readily digested by the non-professionals. So that link is missing. Even the investigations happening right now, I see even the journalists who are raising the questions are not targeting the real causes. They are just surfacing certain.
Mr. Dashti, what are the real causes that Mr. Ashok Abegunwardana is talking about?
I think the main cause is that the professionals are today too silent. People who can assert are not assertive. People who should be able to be vocal, create public opinion, are looking after themselves only. It's a selfish society. But I feel that the next generation is very much better. I think we can look forward to something, because if you ask me, I would say media is the most open society that we have today. You may not agree with
Mr. Dashti, let's talk about let's focus on the here and now. Maybe the future will be better, but you also have to look at making the here and now better as well. Do you think that all of these commissions, the Pressifact, all of these so many different commissions we had, this was a major accusation against the government of President Mahinda Rajapaksa as well, is that every time there's a problem, they'd appoint a commission, and then after that everyone forgets about it. Are these commissions, under good government, under Yahapalne, are these commissions a smokescreen to divert public attention away from the real problems, like passing right to information, like getting electoral reform done, constitutional reform? So are these commissions this, like Mr. Warnasuriya said, is this just showmanship? Are we giving the public the appearance of there being a government when nothing really is happening?
I think it's a very convenient device to get over a major problem. You appoint a commission and the commission does nothing. You get a commission report, you do nothing about it, and the whole thing becomes dormant. I think this is just a stage show. This is for public consumption. But I would say, if you look at it, most of these commissions are good as home for the aged. Really, I think you need young, dynamic people who are go-getters in this commission. Very often, it is retired old stagers who should be in home for the aged who are in these commissions. So I would say I have no faith, and if you look at the track record of this government in its few days, let's give these commissions a little more time. But if you go on past practice, I think they have served no useful purpose whatsoever.
Mr. Dasri, these young and dynamic wannabes yesterday were rather attacked by the police. The police spokesperson described the force as minimal. Would you agree with him?
Well, when one sees the injuries, I won't say the force used is minimal. But it is good that there's some kind of agitation, but that agitation also must be sensible agitation. I mean, it doesn't give the right for university students to go on parade and disrupt, but they have the right to agitate, because if you cut this kind of agitational process by heavy hand, that is what the government does. Sometimes you can't blame the government. It is sometimes the very force that does it on its own.
But they came under attack, water cannon, tear gas. There's a very graphic photograph in one of the papers today where this girl is bleeding somewhat profusely, and clearly all the international channels will take this on and continue to say that Sri Lanka is rather a brutal place.
Very much so, I quite agree with you. But the question is, in Sri Lanka, I mean, there is certain demonstrations that are very curtailed because they invade the rights of individuals, right of movement. But there are ways of doing it. I think no society is more scared of water than the Sri Lankan society. You can see when a shower comes how everybody goes without into shelters. Now the water cannon has proved to be a very effective thing, but do you need this kind of weapons, arms that causes the kind of injury that you described?
Would you, in a word, do you agree that the force was minimal, or does it appear to be more than minimal?
I would say it's excessive. I think you use more than minimal is putting it very mildly. I would say it's excessive and it's unwarranted. That is why we get...
When law enforcement officers use excessive force against citizens of Sri Lanka, what recourse is there for the victims of excessive force?
Well, you see the right, we have the right to demonstrate. The right of demonstration has constraints and restraints. But if there is excessive power used, you could always bring court action, get compensation. But the question is, can people like this afford that? So that it is important that the government must ensure that the officers conduct themselves properly. That is why I started today's discussion by saying you can't blame only the politicians, you have to blame the public servants. And I go
Mr. Varnasuri, do you think that the legal community, the fraternity of lawyers, has a responsibility in doing some pro bono work to ensure that the police are kept in line, to ensure that excessive force...
The legal community have always been willing to do it. If you remember, the legal community also faced the water cannons, 2010 when the 80th Amendment came. We also faced tear gas. We also ran inside the Supreme Court premises when the legal community in jackets and ties were attacked by the police. 2012 we faced the same water cannons and tear gas. So remember, legal community has also bad experiences of this. Legal community have always been willing. That's what we know. We always are very quick to rush and say legal community are sharks, only interested in money. But the amount of public interest cases that are taken up, particularly by young lawyers every day, you'll be amazed at how many battles are fought in court every day. So yes, the legal community, unfortunately, legal community, Nadeep, my learned friend and I will agree, we can't espouse litigation on air, or ethically we are not allowed to invite people to come and file cases. That's against the ethical boundary. But if people are willing to take these issues on, there will be several lawyers who will be willing to speak for them, and purely on pro bono basis.
Mr. Ashri said that, give me a second, Mr. Abhigunawardana. Mr. Ashri said that the government cannot be blamed fully. His submission on yesterday's incident. Do you agree with that, Mr. Varnasuri?
I don't think that's entirely what Mr. Ashri said. He said the government cannot be blamed, but the public officers need to be responsible for what they do. But ultimately, the responsibility for public officers falls on the government. You see, that's the distinction he was trying to make. There was a time that we had public servants and government servants. You see, public servants they swear an oath, just like we lawyers do, just like parliamentarians do. When you take public office, you swear an oath of allegiance to the state. They are state servants, they are public servants. Now, over time, public servants have started thinking like government servants. Why? Because governments of the day have started changing the public officials each time they come. Now, if you look at permanent secretaries to ministries, they immediately change. I don't know how many of you are too young to remember. Remember the old BBC series, Yes Prime Minister, Yes Minister. Now, there was an old chap called Humphrey, who was a permanent secretary to the ministry. You see, Humphrey never changed, although the minister changed. So Humphrey kept running the minister, according to what the state wished.
Is there freedom of expression in the island right now?
No, we don't, because our governments of the day keep changing the public servant. So now public servants have started thinking they're government servant. They are meant to serve the public, not the minister. There were, I don't want to mention names, there were very staunch public servants who took ministers on and said, no minister, I don't agree with you. This is not what you should be doing. I have been doing this for 25 years, you have just come here, this is not how this is supposed to go. But we don't have those servants anymore. That's what we're at pains to say. Let's bring back, when you give me time, I'll go into it as to what we need to do. Nadeep's question, to make a better country. I have heaps of suggestions, I don't know if you have enough time for it, but there are things that we can do.
Mr. Abhigir,
I just wanted to discuss about the other side of the story. Now, while I was an undergraduate, I was leading one of the universities in Sri Lanka. We need to understand the real issue. Now, what we are discussing after the incident is about the democratic part. But what exactly their slogan was, and what changes we should have made to whether it's a reasonable one or whether we need to change.
Do you
Those are
justify
the core
what happened
issues we need to
yesterday?
address.
Do you justify what happened yesterday?
No, the point is now from the student movement point of view, what we need is something like that happened yesterday.
As a professional.
I mean that was the dynamics. That was the politics involved with that. The issue is now we are discussing about the democracy-related issue, but the core issue is not that. Core issue is whether their slogan is correct or not. Now we are not discussing that. If so, what changes, what education reform should happen in order to address those issues. Now, from the students' movement of point of view, they believe they cannot achieve this. What they want is a struggle and then actions. I think the mistake was made by the government. They need to very carefully handle this in order to avoid such confrontations. And from the
are you trying to say,
point of view, they need a confrontation.
Mr. Abhigir, so you mean to say that the students' movement needed a confrontation? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's how the student movement works, because I was leading one of those universities. I know the momentum, because we win, we can win it, or the slogans we can achieve, or else divert our attention to something else, so that the public will discuss about the other issues.
Ms. Jayashree, it was a trap and the government got caught. Is that right if I say it in that sense?
Well, I think students very often try to get into confrontational situations to make an event out of it, to get publicity. That is, I mean, it's not only students. Today everybody is acting. My good friend said correctly that public servants become good government servants. I take a step further. Public servants become government servants. They're really political servants. They're political animals. Today, that is not the job of a public servant. He has to guide the minister. If the minister is doing the wrong thing, it is not correct to say yes, minister. But today, it's a generation of yes ministers. The problem is there is no independent public service whatsoever. Yes.
Mr. Asok, how much of yesterday's incident and today's too do you think has been instigated by interested parties?
Well, I have no clear idea what will happen next, but this only for few days we will have this issue. But beyond that is the most important thing. My point is now this incident, now we are discussing because of that reason. Now the government will be in a little bit uneasy position, and then some investigation may happen and remedial actions may be taken. But the issue is we need to have a proper strategy towards handling these issues.
But you just said that you led one of these
Student movements.
Movements.
Yeah.
So during your time, how much of influence of instigation came to you? Maybe from the JVP.
Well, actually, now I was not directly involved with a political party, but I was working with those who were working on those fronts. But now, I mean, we were at the early stages during early 80s. Then that led towards this unrest that happened in 1987 and to 89.
How many meetings did you have with the JVP? How many meetings did you have with the JVP during your time?
No, actually, I was attending these inter-university gatherings. There we had a diverse group. We had left oriented.
So you never met with the JVP then?
Well, we were interacting while now Ranjitam Gunratnam and Upali Jayavira were there as the conveners of those things. So we had a constructive dialogue, but it's political. We need to understand that. So handling that is the responsibility of the government to remove certain causes or the root causes so that there won't be any political agenda.
Mr. Abigail, you said initially that you were not involved with any political party, but now you're saying that it was political. What are you trying to say?
Yeah, now political, I mean, I am a political animal anyway, but I am not with a particular political party as.
You're with a lot of political parties.
Yeah, I mean, I had my own independent ideas, but I knew that as a student and a student leader, we need to have a collective effort.
Mr. Dayasri, you said that the education...
Chaturanga, we'll go in for a short commercial break, and when we come back, you can pose your questions. We're now going for a short commercial break. Police brutality, that's what we were discussing all this time. After this break, we will be talking about avant-garde, good governance, and the role of the Attorney General's Department. All this and more after this short commercial break. Stay with us. This is Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We start off the third round with Mr. Asoka Bekunawardana, Managing Director of the Strategic Enterprise Management Agency. You describe yourself as a political animal, Mr. Bekunawardana. Do you think we are on the right track?
Yeah, now I'll start from where I stopped in the previous round. Now, I had certain ambitious targets, and I think during the next 2 to 3 years, we need to achieve certain targets, otherwise it's of no use. The change made is not adequate. So I'll just explain you one example. Now, from the president's point of view, he wanted to give the freedom or the democracy for the other political leaders to exercise. So he tried to do that within his party. He failed. That's why again this Mahinda Rajapaksa's nomination candidacy issue came up, and he gave the opportunity for the UNP to exercise and do something useful. I think they are very slow. My gut feeling, I cannot understand why that's not happening, because they originally had their own vision. They should have, they should be ready to deliver something to the nation. But the way it's progressing, they have no policies in place right now. They are not prepared. They are just trying to start from zero. Those things are happening. So at this stage, the president advised us to develop a comprehensive strategic plan for addressing the issues in the agriculture sector. I'll give you an example. Now, recently he announced that in Kilinochchi he launched it, saying that, well, we are dumping heavy sums of money for importing food items that can be produced locally. So, within 3 years, now his instruction is to grow locally so that we can get rid of this importation of food. Now the next item is, while producing locally, the agriculture sector, how can we get rid of imported chemical fertilizer and pesticide? So now we are developing a program so that during the next 3 years, we are trying to introduce the traditional variety seeds in all with respect to all crops, and then make it mainstream, so that mainstreaming is to make sure that we will get the same harvest or more nutritional level using the same land. So we have formulated sort of a comprehensive plan, and in the near future it will be launched. So those things had a specific target for achieving something useful in a 3-year period. It's an aggressive target.
I just want to interrupt you for a second here. You said you were very much involved in politics, even in your in the time that you were a leader of your students' movement. Whose side are you in now?
Well, I am with the president right now, and I was for the national government.
Right now, at this very moment.
Well, I'm not with any particular party, but I think I have a different role right now. Now, we contributed to form this government. We need to deliver. So I am part of that. I am sharing that responsibility. So I think at least in the now my pet subject is energy, and I am focusing more towards renewable energy, sustainable energy. So on that front, I think with the president and the cabinet, I may be able to have a useful contribution to make a drastic change. Now this change is very important because we are moving from the
Are you
destructive
contributing
development
enough,
towards
Mr.
sustainable.
Abhinavardhan? Are you contributing enough to this
Well,
change?
I believe I have the opportunity and I am doing my best to, for the nation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashok Abhinavardhan. I now move on to Senior Attorney at Law, Mr. Govinda Ashri. No charges first, and after a few weeks, there are charges. What is the role of the Attorney General's Department of this country? The time starts now, Mr.
The
Ashri.
Attorney General's Department, I think, is a classic case of one of the most glorious departments in Sri Lanka. Today, showing a pathetic display of what I would consider as the rapid deterioration of the public service. A, it has become politicized. B, it is no longer independent. 3, the amount of work done is negligible. So in all respects, I think there is a very steady deterioration. Of course, there are exceptions, I must say. There are exceptions, very sturdy exceptions. But where are the people, where are those giants of the past? Where are those such names like Bud Janse, Victor Tennocone? They were great men. I mean, they could tell a politician where he got off. But no longer is that possible. Why is that? Why is it that these... remember, the Attorney General is a protected animal under the Constitution, like the Auditor General. He could act independently. He can tell the Prime Minister or the President, this is the law, no one is above the law. But do they do that? Today, they succumb. There was a time when it was very bad. When it was... sorry.
For us.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Ashri, when did the rot start? Yes.
Rot to me started when it was first politicized. That was when I think Jayawardena elected a person by the name Amin was brought in. But the rot really started in the time of ex-Chief Justice Sarath Sil.
Can the public have faith in the Attorney General's Department?
The public, I think, has the contributions made by the Attorney General Department is so negligible. As a result, it is not only the Attorney General that loses face, the entire judiciary loses face. Because let us look at this avant-garde case. First they go and file a petition. They file a complaint or a B report in the magistrate's court. Now they don't say who gave advice to file it under those acts. Then they say there is no case whatsoever. They withdraw. Now they are continuing to hold investigations and they say there is material emerging. Now, isn't it a situation where they have not acted in a prudent, professional manner? I mean, they say different things. And what is the respect people can have for that? In the old days, the Attorney General's word was like the word of the Chief Justice. They were colossal giants. Today, they are miniature characters.
Kumaran Padmanabhan's case as well, KP's case as well, we saw the manner in which the Aegis Department first made a submission to court, and then we saw a few days ago a new submission being made to court.
Precisely. What does that mean? They change. What is the Attorney General's Department? They have to enforce the law properly. Are they playing politics when they do things like that? Not only the case of KP. Let us look at the case of Karuna. Let us look at the case of so many people. Now we have all these corruption charges. Why were those things not? Why were people not prosecuted? How many prosecutions, successful prosecutions has the Attorney General's Department achieved? There are exceptions. There are very able gentlemen still. But do they get into the forefront?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashri. I have to leave it at that. I move on to Attorney at Law, Mr. Krishmal Varanasuriya. You've been extremely vocal, Mr. Varanasuriya, about the conduct of this government and the governance structure in which they have progressed over the last few months. Is this government losing the plot? Your time starts now.
Thanks, Shamir. That brings me lovely on to what I was going to use this time on to answer that Nadeeb's question that I posed earlier. I didn't get time to. As to what can this government do, I have lots of ideas, but I'm going to limit myself to the 2 minutes you give me. I'll go fast down a list. Look at the traffic systems, Akkala. How many hours of manpower, economy of the country, fuel do we spend on our roads in traffic congestions? Why don't the politicians do anything about it? Because they don't feel it. They go with their QV view down the road, pushing all of us aside, and they get to from A to B when at the time they want. All of us are stuck in traffic. How many public service hours can they save in public offices if they do something like in other countries? Public transport systems where even parliamentarians go to parliament by public transport. You come and park near your village station, go in public transport. We spend millions on projects. How long does it take for them to put, say, 3 underground stations from say Rajagiri, Battarmulla to Colombo, Wattala Katnaga to Colombo, and Panadura to Colombo? What does it take? Look at our public servants, our public office. What has been done to depoliticize the public service? Bring back. My parents are public servants. My father worked for 13 years in the budget division. I mean, I remember having grown up as a son of a public servant, how they used to look at their jobs. What have we done to depoliticize that, allow public servants to continue although governments change? Then, the diplomatic appointment. There is a parliamentary high committee on high posts. When have the last diplomatic appointments gone before this high post committee? When have we heard of it? Look at the Auditor General's department. They are still looking at the old audit system where if you spend, show a bill, that expenditure is over. There is something called value for money audit in the world now, VFM audit, where the government must actually show value for the public expenditure that you have incurred, not just a bill for the expenditure. Have we gone there? Legal systems, laws delays. How many days are cases put back? In other countries, there are things called pre-court conference calls between the judge and counsel. How long will you take for the case tomorrow, counsel? How long will you take? Okay, I'm going to give you half an hour. We can do things that put this system in place. None of this, I'm sorry to say, has been happening, and that is why I say there is good governance that we can do, none of which is happening, and therefore I'm disgruntled.
Mr. Varasurya, people can talk, people can say and express a lot of views about good governance, about what should be done. Are these all practical?
Of course, well, it's happening in the rest of the world. I'll take that last example. Time wasted in court by litigants and lawyers and judges can be immediately curtailed by bringing in a system where you fix a time for a case. Now, my learned friend and I know, we go to the Supreme Court at say 10 in the morning. Our case sometimes is taken up at about 12:30 in the afternoon, where we spend very good working time waiting for a case. Sometimes that's not taken up. The other side moves for a day. Now, this does not happen. I have practiced, I was a pupil barrister in another country. We have a pre-case conference call between the judge and counsel. The judge allocates a time and gives you a time to come to court. That's the time you go to court. And then, the previous day you have actually allocated how much time you and the other side counsel are going to take on arguments also. You know, these are things that are very easily done. You don't even need to change the law for that. Some practice guidelines can come in. You know, if they ask the legal fraternity, I'm sure all of us will come out with several suggestions on how to do traffic system. I'm sure my friend Mr. Abbegunwadana and so many others.
Role of the Attorney General's department.
Well,
I sometimes believe, Mr. Varasurya, you are losing the plot.
The Attorney General's department?
Yes.
Well, if that is so, I'm not agreeing with you, because on this avant-garde issue I have a total different take on it. I agree that some things don't appear to have been done the way it should have been done. But there is another approach that needs to be taken, because
Submissions first being made to the Gaul High Court, and then you have again submissions being made by the Attorney General's department. So you agree with this? It's fine to have two different views.
I'm not holding an umbrella for the agency department. All I'm saying, Shamir, is under the offensive weapons, I discussed this on Saturday last week. Under the Offensive Weapons Act, the Defence Secretary can give an authority to do this business. Now, rightly or wrongly, such an authority is there for avant-garde. You follow? But what has gone wrong is they have been given a monopoly to do this business, which is void ab initio. No contract can go on if it's creating a monopoly. Now, my question is, why is the government trying to hammer the Attorney General and the police for not taking action when there is an authority in place to do the business without revoking that authority to do the business, revoking the monopoly? Take the monopoly away, then they can't conduct the business.
Mr. Varasurya, is there any legal premise at all? If not under the firearms ordinance, then under any other law?
Firearms are not offensive weapons.
Firearms ordinance or any other, is there any piece of legislation or statute anywhere in our law books that says that what is being done by avant-garde, that provision of maritime security, holding these weapons on a floating army goal, is there any statute that says that this is illegal?
Well, don't go anywhere else. Under the firearms ordinance itself. You see, let me give you an example. Now, firearms, because all of us don't have guns at home, we don't know this. Say we are given a license for our radio and TVs at home now. If we violate that license condition, that itself is an offence under that act. Okay. So similarly, under the firearms ordinance, if they have been given an authority to do the business, but like the reports show us, Some of the guns, the numbers are not known. Some of the weapons that have been brought are foreign weapons which have not been registered as it ought to have been registered under the authority.
There's a report, today in the papers that a lot of the weapons were purchased from the army.
Then you're violating some of the conditions under which that authority can be given. So that itself is valid enough to take action. You follow, you don't need to go to any other law. You can't give a blanket approval for anyone to bring weapons from anywhere in the world, say from Mars, say intergalactic weapons and fight in Sri Lanka. You see, they are all bound by regulations. Now, if they are violating those regulations, you can take action against them. I am not saying it's a blanket approval. Yes, sir.
Mr. Wanasuri, do you think perhaps that this agreement isn't being revoked by the Ministry of Defence because there is a clause here, 3.3 of this agreement, which says that the government, through Ratna Raksha Lanka Limited, shall pay a sum of United States dollars 25 million to Avantgarde in the event that they do business with somebody else or closes the agreement. Do you think that's the fair?
Unfortunately, what you're privy to, I still have not been privy to. I haven't seen that contract. But I'll go on what you're reading. Yes. If that contract says it, I say there is absolutely no problem, because what is unlawful at birth cannot give rise to legal implications. If the contract itself is void ab initio, ab initio means it's void from the start. So when that contract is made to give a monopoly to one person, that is void ab initio. It's unlawful. You can't give a monopoly in a free market. Now, a contract that is invalid at birth cannot give rise to a legal implication to pay anything. I use a very simple example. You and I can't contract to kill someone. Say, Samir, we are not going to kill you. But we can't agree to kill someone on a contract. And then if you don't kill him, I can't sue you for damages. Why? Because what we contracted on is unlawful. You follow?
On what premise is the contract with Avantgarde unlawful?
Because it creates a monopoly.
Because
it creates a monopoly.
The
you
creation
can't give anyone a monopoly.
Because the technical terms might just go over our viewers' heads. The creation of a monopoly.
I know
what a monopoly is. I'm saying our viewers also probably know what a monopoly is. My question is, is the creation of a monopoly, through government contract, through the government offering a contract, is that illegal?
Of course it is.
Under which law?
Well, under the Unfair Contract Terms Act, which is specific law, but even under that common law.
Mr. Ashton, why not revoke it if that's the case? If that is the case, then why can't it be?
The Constitution gives us all equality. The same should apply to a company.
Paras, I don't think we should be mixing Constitution and contract.
No, but this is relevant, because if my company can't do it.
There is a wider picture there. If someone were to challenge this in the Supreme Court and say someone who had tendered for the contract and not got it.
There was never a tender.
Yeah, and said that Avantgarde getting it was unconstitutional, yes, there is an argument that your right to equality was violated under Article 12(1). Then it can be argued in the Supreme Court that way. But we don't need to go this way. There is a direct approach. Creating a monopoly under our law, whether it's at statute law, at common law, is wrong in law. You can't create a monopoly. So if you can't create a monopoly, cancel this contract.
So what you're saying is this.
Why not revoke it?
Ask the government.
So
I wish I was advising them.
So, Mr. Wanasuri, should the Defence Secretary now take this contract and dump it in the bin?
Well, perhaps the Defence Secretary ought to, because I haven't seen it, the Defence Secretary ought to get proper legal advice on that first, and have someone read it fully and see what
Where can he get this legal advice when the Attorney General is so muddle-headed, apparently, from this whole issue?
Well, that's an apparent question. I don't know.
Well, it's apparent because he's said once he says he's going to file charges, and then he says there's no
but
charges.
That is why he has said it for us. The Attorney General has gone on record saying, I defended this and said a criminal prosecution can't lie in the magistrate's court because pseudo or otherwise, perpetrated or otherwise, these people appear to have an authority under the Firearms Ordinance to do this business.
How did he find that out, do you think?
Well, he would have seen the contract.
Or did he write to the former defense, or did he write to the former Defence Secretary and ask him?
Speculation.
I think my recollection is at one point he did say that this matter should be inquired by the Bribery Commission. Right. Now you have a very interesting situation where you say there's a monopoly term in that contract. If that is so, under the unfair contract agreements statute, even a public spirited individual can bring an action to have that set aside. Now why is it that in Sri Lanka we don't have that category of persons? There were a few, but no longer are such people visible.
Is it because there was a real fear psychosis in the previous government?
We don't have it anymore.
If you remember, I remember there were cases where people, notwithstanding the fear psychosis, did bring action. Now, if you remember, the insurance corporation divesting took place because of a public spirited attitude of certain individuals. Now, that was during the last government.
So that was a good order from Sarat Silva then.
I don't say good or bad.
You said before that the rot started with him.
No, I would definitely say rot, but I'm here saying only the fact that actions were instituted by public citizens. Not that I'm not talking of the merits of the judgment. But such people are very rare. But such people are difficult to find. But if there is such a person, even you have the right to come to court.
It might be a bit of a conflict of interest when I keep going on about these things on the network.
Not really.
Mr. Abegunawardhan, now I was dying to ask this question from you earlier before Shamir cut me off and went for a break. Now the question is, now we know that there was an issue recently with regard to the education sector. We know there is an issue with regard to the transportation sector. As we were discussing now, we know that there is an issue pertaining to the legal sector. You said you were responsible in bringing about the current government to power. Don't you feel responsible now to get these problems? Now I'm sure our viewers at home want the answer for this. Don't you think you should take steps now to make sure that these problems are addressed in as a whole?
I totally agree. That's what I'm saying. I'm doing my best to achieve certain results. Now, actually, I don't have expertise on this legal sector. So the way he expressed, I think we have a case. We have a firm case which we can achieve. And I can clearly explain what we can do in the power sector, because it's my expertise. And we have in-depth discussions regarding the transport sector, how to have the public transport sector strengthened, and electrification of railways. Railways is idling for years now. So comprehensive plans can be easily made because we have the expertise locally.
But when will they come, Ashoka?
Yeah, now that I'm saying now I think this is a useful occasion for me to suggest that, well, now we are discussing internally with certain resource persons, and I can make sure that, well, in the agricultural sector we will be definitely having a breakthrough in the coming months, because this Maha season, now we are dedicating.
How long must the people wait, Mr. Abegunawardhan?
No, I was saying now this Maha season, we will be concentrating on having traditional seeds available for the next Yala and Maha season in the next year, so that we can go mainstream the traditional varieties which can produce same harvest. So that's the most important part. So mainstreaming, now we have done the basics and we have done the homework and we are doing it.
Mr. Dasri, I'm sorry, Mr. Dasri, now if I'm to show you the flip side of this whole the HNDA students issue, if you mentioned in your previous turn that there are constraints when to show your agitation when it comes to problems like this, if the students are going forward from their constraints, from their restraints and showing their agitation, isn't there a problem? Isn't that the flip side? Isn't that what you all should address as legal experts, as political animals and as parliamentarians? Isn't this what you all should address? The flip side from the government's point of view.
Chaturanga, Mr. Varun Suri is not a parliamentarian.
I'm sorry?
Almost.
He was a former nationalist candidate.
Let me rephrase, let me say political activists, as all of you are.
Well, I think in this matter, one is confronted with young people agitating. I think that's not only something common to Sri Lanka, it's an international phenomenon. In that, I think that's a reawakening, it's a good thing. But if you look at it, is it politically motivated? Now when I see the script, when I see the slogans, it shows there are definite political tendencies, undercurrents. Now is it politicians using students to further their political activity, or is it genuine students' problems? So that if you can identify a genuine students' problems, then there should be a stage of dialogue before this kind of confrontation takes place. The question I'm asking is, did this confrontation take place without a dialogue, or did the dialogue completely collapse for them to take this drastic step? Now, having taken the step, one must realize we are in a democratic society. Such agitation is possible. provided it does not exceed the limits of tolerance or limits that are imposed by law. If that is so, the legal authorities have to get involved to see that public is not inconvenienced. But then the legal authorities also, the enforcement authorities cannot exceed those powers.
But this particular issue is not one that came to light all of a sudden. This was on the 22nd of December last year. The same set of students, same HNDA students were attacked. If you don't mind, I'll direct my question this time to Mr. Varnasuri and say, now, if, as Mr. Dayasri say, if these movements were politically motivated, that's not the issue. The issue is, there is a loophole, even if they are politically motivated, there is a loophole in the
You have
education
refrained
system.
from commenting on the subjects in question. Just pose the question to the
Okay, so the problem is that there is a loophole in education.
I understand the question, Chaturanga, but may I just correct all of us? Because on my way here, on the news I heard in the evening that the Minister of Education had gone on record and said that he already had solved this problem. So therefore he doesn't see a reason as to why these students were agitated.
Minister of
Now that
Higher
I connect with what Mr. Dayasri was saying. If that was so, I'm not for a moment taking away the attack, which I saw some of the picture Faraz was mentioning, and I think that was way over the limit. That is not relative to the force that was called for. But as to whether these students were there for that reason only, or were they also trying to make some news and get some headway in whatever political ambition, is a question that we as a public, don't forget, we were also part of university students in Colombo. I was also at the University of Colombo. And we have also taken part in agitation. But civil unrest and civil disobedience does not mean that you break down public property and break gates and throw stones and break skulls and hit policemen and take their caps off. There has to be a manner in which this is done, so that the public, you need to be political and win the public over when you are doing it. Now there is an element of public who were travelling on those roads yesterday. I was one of them, who were coming from court at that time, who was stuck for hours on traffic. Now that public is not going to feel for these students because they have inconvenienced them. You follow? You need to go about civil disobedience in a way the great Mahatma Gandhi and them did, by winning the people through your civil disobedience to get your point across. Not inconvenience the people, hit the police also, and then create havoc, so that there is even this disagreement now as to whether there is a grievance or not. Now if there is a grievance, the minister says there isn't. So the students must now come out and say what the minister is saying is off his hat. He has not solved our problem. But minister says he has solved the problem. So if that was so, then why did they go on the road yesterday? You follow? So we need to look at both sides of this.
Ms. Dayasri, do you agree with what Mr. Varnasuri is saying?
Well, I would, when a minister says something, I don't believe it. I don't trust it.
Do you trust what Mr. Varnasuri is saying as an attorney at
No,
law?
Mr. Varnasuri is merely quoting the minister. He is certainly not, he's not quoting, he's not speaking as a person in authority, because he's not such a person. But let me tell you, ministers, we have had a number of ministers, especially in higher education, hilarious gentlemen, who would say anything, who would in fact do such things that bring students into disrepute. Students despise such conduct. And sometimes they put, especially people like that, to keep students under control. So one cannot take the word of the minister, one cannot take the word of the student. I suppose the important thing is the media must present facts, so that the people are able to gauge the correct position, know what is happening. That is what is important on the part of the media. And I feel that the media did the right thing in portraying the thing. But if they are interested in this event, then they should examine the background in this kind of program, bring students and let them express their point of view so that you know it. So I think both sides must be given an opportunity. That is democracy, and that is what you say is happening now. Let's hope it does happen in an aggressive, correct attitude.
By your statement, do you mean that the government has already, in the limited time they have been in power, has already lost its credibility? You said you don't believe what the ministers come forward and say.
I would say not only this ministers from time immemorial or in recent times, I'm very skeptical of what they say, because they are not responsible, they are not honest and truthful. That is what my experience. I don't say of this government, I would say of all previous governments also.
Can I just go back to avant-garde for a moment?
Yes, please. No problem at all.
as I told you this morning, an upright citizen, hopefully of good standing, delivered this document to my letterbox.
And you said you give me a copy, you never did.
I will, and by the morning you shall have one. It's again, I say purported, okay? It says here, this is the recommendations made by one, and here's the name, sorry, God. Here we go. Vasanta Navaratna Bandara. ASG.
Additional Solicitor General.
Thank you. His recommendations are that 3 offences should be filed against 5 people. I won't mention their names, but unauthorised importation of firearms to Sri Lanka under the Prevention of Terrorism Act and Firearms Ordinance, possession of firearms and ammunition without valid licenses under the Firearms Ordinance and Explosives Ordinance, and conspiracy, aiding and abetting to commit these offences. Now here's an ASG who's saying this. Apparently 3 others said the same thing, virtually. And yet you say that they had authority.
No, I don't say that. You see, I have not been privy to all the material that the ASG and the other 3 would have studied to give this opinion to Honourable the Attorney General. Now, all we know is that the Attorney General reports and the police correspond with that and say that the Attorney General said, I cannot file action under these ordinances. So, for us now, with all due respect to Mr. Navaratna Bandara and the 3 others, we can only accept the Attorney General's department as speaking when the AG says something.
I want to very quickly say this to you, Krishma. What it is here, it goes back to what I said before, that it appears that when Mr. Navaratna Bandara made these recommendations, there was no knowledge of that permission that was granted by the former Defence Secretary. And how did that come into the possession of the Attorney General after this? That's the question. The Attorney General's department is not an investigative role.
So the AG's department must answer that. But since we are speculating on the premise of speculation, may I say how it may have? Because when this opinion goes to the AG, he definitely would have sanctioned action. But then you call a report from the relevant ministry. Before you sanction action, you call a report. Then maybe the ministry, I don't know. That's why maybe the ministry wrote back and said, no, at the AG, there is an authority for this company to do this business. And this is a copy of the authority. So that may have happened. We don't know. But probably the AG's department must clarify this as to why senior officers are saying prosecute and the AG is saying not.
Who are they trying to defend, Mr. Varun Surya? The Attorney General's department. Are they trying to defend anyone?
They're certainly trying to defend themselves.
On this particular point, on this particular point, I'm not talking any other. I don't think they're trying to defend anyone on this particular point, but there is a question as to whether the authority given to Rakna Arakshaka Lanka to do this business, that's what them or some others are trying to protect, because as I said, that authority appears to be expressly unlawful. So someone's trying to protect someone, but I don't know whether it's AG, because if I were the AG and if I have an approval given to do this business, as I said, this is not only done by Rakna Lanka. Previously the Navy did it. This is a legit business under the Act.
But actually, a lot of new apples, and then you have a lot of bad apples as well, rotten apples as well. Can we describe it like that?
Well, I mean, I think it's very difficult to put it into 2. It's one bundle of apples. But I think there are more rotten apples, because what are all these contradictions? I mean, it simply means that nobody has studied the brief sufficiently exhaustively, because any opinions that originate from the Attorney General should be uniform. It should have the sanction of the Attorney General. People can't fire opinions because the Attorney General has once given an opinion. If this is so, you are making him look small.
Mr. Varun Surya, Mr. Dasri, as they are both been in the legal community for a very long time. Well, obviously Mr. Varun Surya, not as long as Mr. Dasri. Mr. Dasri, so I'll pose this question to you and you can chip in if you want. In your long history working as a lawyer, how often have you seen such reports being leaked from the Attorney General's department?
I'll quickly answer.
Has it ever happened?
Yeah, let my friend answer.
I've been at the bar now, this is my 16th year going, together with my studies about close upon 19 years. Never.
How come?
Never.
Had there
Never have
never
I seen
been
a
something on the
conflict.
scale
Nadim,
of
very
Avanta?
quickly, Mr. Astri, we need to wrap up as well.
I think this is unusual. It should never happen. I mean, you must act under the authority of the Attorney General. This doesn't show discipline in the department. It also shows that the Attorney General does not seem to have sufficient control over his own officers. It's sad. Because a head of department, you must learn to respect him. His opinion is given a considered opinion. That doesn't seem to be happening if this kind of information is leaked to the media.
Mr. Abhigunawardhan, very quickly, as a layman, as a professional, what are your thoughts on this? Contradicting views being opposed, brought forward by one of the highest bodies, legal bodies in the country.
Yeah, definitely it's sad. And on the other hand, I think, I wonder whether now, in addition to the legal aspects of these, now the business related matters, I think there should be some expert opinion on that matter as well, regarding, I mean, I am comfortable with the other sectors, but generally it's more than something more than legal framework, and the business related matters, and maybe the using of weapons and all that. So I think the Attorney General Department, if they are just looking at the law, then I think they are leading to such things. But generally, they should have a team of experts. That's what I'm saying. Professionalism, not only on the law issues, but they need to have the broader approach as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashok Abhigunawardhan. We're now going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's 1.5 minutes for each speaker, and then we'll wrap up Face the Nation for tonight. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Final round, 1 minute each for each speaker, and I'll give a 15-second grace period for them to wrap up as well. We start off with Mr. Ashok Abhigunawardhan. Mr. Abhigunawardhan, what is the way forward for Sri Lanka?
Well, actually, this is an ideal opportunity for the intellectuals, professionals, experts, for them to contribute to have a comprehensive long-term strategy for Sri Lanka. So, I mean, I can just discuss about one or two subject areas because I have knowledge about the others, but this is, I believe, this is an ideal opportunity for all professionals, all experts in all sectors, for them to contribute in a progressive way. As we heard earlier, I am fully in agreement that the intellectuals, professionals are not doing their job right now because they are silent and their contribution is minimal. So this is an ideal opportunity. Now we do our best to initiate a dialogue among ourselves, among the sector professionals, and we are in the process of formulating proper strategies for the Sri Lanka for the next era. So in that context, I think we have core burning issues in the transport sector. We have resolved that. So this is an ideal opportunity for all of us to engage. But I believe even the media, if you can have a dedicated sector-wise discussions, then we can have the people from the same sector discussing openly, so we can get a better picture rather than discussing some cases in a wider manner.
Thank you very much, Mr.
So
Ashok
I believe
Abhigunawardhan.
this is an ideal opportunity for all of us to contribute to achieve something for the nation.
We'll definitely take your input to action, and hopefully next week we will be discussing about sectors as well, especially when the budget is coming up on the 20th of November, and we obviously will be looking at that aspect as well. I now move on to Mr. Krishmal Varanasuri, attorney at law. You were with the Reds before. Do you think that the Reds are playing the role of opposition parliamentarians now? Because in your opening address you said the opposition is not active. Are the Reds playing their role?
You've given me 1 minute, so thank you for inviting me. When you say I was with the Reds, I was not with the Reds before. I was invited by a Red party to come in on the national list to go to Parliament. And so that was my long and short of being with the Reds is concerned. But I remain Red at heart because all of us have red blood flowing in us. And we become passionate citizens of this country. This golden soil that some of us have gone abroad and having had options to stay abroad have come back when there was a war going on. Not after the war, like several others did. When there was a war going on, we came back thinking that we can develop this country, that we must contribute to it. So I think that if the government really wants to go forward, they must, like Ashoka said, take all these thoughts on board and build up a government so that all of us that were at least in a little way contributing to that change are happy that we've done something. The day we die, like vitae lampada, the old Latin term, that the torch in flame, that we pass it on to the next generation, that we've done a little bit to make a better country for you so that you can take it further. But right now, all our efforts seem to be in vain, Shamir, because we don't see the good governance or the rule of law or all that we shouted for happening except just merry governing, and that includes your question. I do not see a cogent opposition in Parliament.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varun Surya. I now move on to Senior Attorney at Law, Mr. Gomin Dayasri. Mr. Dayasri, are you satisfied in the way in which this government is moving forward? Your time starts now.
Very interesting program. I think clearly showed that we are not moving forward, we are moving backwards. Yahapalene is accelerating the backward swing in the sense that we see, I don't blame the politicians alone. I blame the public servants who are stooging the politicians. I blame the professionals who are remaining silent. I blame the private sector who are probably have no controls at all because things like bribery and corruption does not extend to them. I think it's time that society wakens up, attends to these needs, because if that is not so, we will keep deteriorating and on the decline. Time's come. There is not much time ahead. I think we must now look forward to a better tomorrow by looking at not only blaming public servants but blame ourselves too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dayasri. Thank you very much, Mr. Varun Surya, for joining us, Mr. Dayasri for joining us this evening as well. And nice to have you on board, Mr. Asakabi Kunawardhan as well. And then our journalist, thank you very much, Chaturanga. Nice to have you on board today. First show, good job. Nice to have you on board as well. Investigative journalist Farah Shaukat Ali. And then Nadeem, nice to have you on board today as well. It was a pleasure having three good journalists posing questions to our panelists. I leave tonight with a quote. Every man, every woman who has to take up the service of government must ask themselves two questions. A. Do I love the people? B. Do I listen to everybody? If you don't ask these questions, your governance will not be good. I leave it to the people to decide tonight. Take care and good night.